All right, so we'll go 3, 2. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special royal edition of a Small Town Failing podcast. I'm Joe, your host, joined once again, I want to say for like the third or fourth time now,
Yeah.
Alys Murrey, writer, script writer, all around personality. I think would go with that. How do you like intro yourself? Like, was I off?
I no, that's exactly right. I
Perfect.
do sometimes have a personality and I write. So both of those things are correct. Yeah. Thank you for having me back. It's always a blast.
Oh my God, thank you. And I love, so you've been on a couple times. We talked about My Southern Family Christmas and Every Time a Bell Rings. And then we did one other Lifetime.
We
So
did two others. We did Campfire Christmas and
oh,
then we
that's right.
did like Kidnapped by My Sugar Daddy or
Yes,
something
yes.
along those lines. With like Bargain Bin Rob Lowe was in it.
Yes, yeah.
Like, yes.
So I should mention for those of you, if it's the first time, Every Time a Bell Rings and My Southern Family Christmas, you wrote, like those were yours. So it was amazing to have you on. But then these fun ones, like we were recording Evan, the last episode, You're Baking Me Crazy. And just before I was about to sit down and record with Evan, I got a message from you with a link to Stalked by a Prince saying, I don't even care if I'm on the episode. You have to discuss this. And oddly enough, like a few days before, for whatever reason, it had like popped up on like the channel guide or something. And I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. And then I got the message from you and I'm like, wow, this makes perfect sense. So I guess the kind of connection here is You're Baking Me Crazy starred Natalie Hall. This movie also stars Natalie Hall, but I guess what kind of drew you to Stalked by a Prince?
Okay, so I am doing a lot of meetings right now, meeting producers and executives. As a writer, you have to kind of always be networking, and so every time someone introduces me to a new person, in the industry, I immediately, you look at their IMDb page, right? And I met a guy. He was great. We had such a great meeting, and checked his IMDb. And one of the first credits was called like The Prince, like on IMDb. The title was just like The Prince. But
I've
the
noticed
cover art
Lifetime
said,
does that a lot. Like they have like alternative names. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
yeah. And it has to do with like Lifetime will title it something, but then if they sell it on to a streamer or whatever, the streamer will
Ah,
usually rename it. Because they all get their own naming rights. But the poster said Stalked by a Prince. And I was like,
yep,
I have to know what that's about.
yep.
And I need Joe's commentary immediately. Like there's not a choice. I have to know what he thinks. And so yeah, I messaged you and was like, this has gotta happen immediately.
I'm so glad because I haven't done a Lifetime movie in a while. So I'm glad you did because I've been wanting to, and I just like have not thought about it or put effort. But Stalked by a Prince, 2022, Lifetime movie, directed by Max McGuire, who, looking at his IMDb page, has done a ton of Hallmark, but also Ice Road Killer,
Oh,
whatever that
hell
is.
yeah.
But that sounds amazing too. So I'm very much into that. But a lot of kind of made for TV and starring. I already mentioned. I have nothing prepared. It's fine. Natalie Hall is kind of our main character, and it's interesting because like in You're Baking Me Crazy, which weird to say constantly. Very sort of bubbly and like a completely different person in this movie. And then Jonathan Keltz, I'm probably saying his last name wrong, but
Yes.
he plays Prince Jack. And,
The other thing that drew me to this movie was in the poster, he's like kind of the main face.
yeah,
And my favorite royalty movie from Hallmark of all time, Once Upon a Prince, I think is what it's called.
yeah.
He stars as the prince in that one. And I was
I was
like,
going to say,
Jonathan,
I
I
looked
have to
at
see
his
what you're like as
page.
an evil prince.
he's got like 4 Prince credits because I was looking last night, like as I was watching, and yeah, I saw that one, and then he was in it's loading, but like a couple others with like he plays a prince. So I feel like he's really got the market cornered on princeness. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, if you're gonna have a thing, he does look a little bit like have you ever seen that horror movie The Boy? With like the little
Yes.
doll. He does bear a slight
No.
resemblance to I forget the name of the Brahms, right? Brahms was the and
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that as an insult by any means, but he has like a very sort of traditional British look about him, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you watch Love
Yeah,
Island
sure.
UK, but there's a guy on there, Will, and like these two could be like spitting images, right? And I think
Yeah, that's
he
probably a
is
more favorable comparison. If you had led
yeah.
with that, you might have eventually gotten Jonathan on the podcast. I feel like leading with the boy, you're
the
probably never getting him to agree to be here.
the murderous doll. I should take it back. But it is like a very and he plays it in this like the very sort of like yes 1945 like
Mm.
I feel like he has that look down, so he's like kind of the perfect fit for this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
And
I
it's so
feel
funny
yeah.
because he was so charming in
Oh, awesome.
like the Once Upon a Prince. Like
Yeah,
it is my favorite like royalty movie because he and I don't remember who was the heroine in that one, but they had such good chemistry. He was so romantic, so smooth. And then in this one, like to watch it flipped on its head, I was like, oh yeah, I buy it. This is terrifying, hundred
yeah.
percent.
So we can kind of dive right into the plot of this. So the our main character here, and everything's running slow, but we'll get there. Natalie Hall plays Ashley Banks, and her and her friend work for some sort of like PR firm, or it's a little nebulous. I don't know if you picked up on it, but like I didn't fully understand like
Yeah.
what the job was.
Yeah, I think it's PR and marketing. They say they have like accounts and clients, and oh, we have to get the commission on this thing, whatever it is. But one thing I have to say is before even that, as
Yes.
lifetimes want to do, because we have to prove that our bad guys have patterns of behavior,
Yep.
it opens with a frantic woman without shoes on. There's the lack of shoes in this movie becomes a weird sticking point. But this woman is like trying to frantically run out of this,
Yep.
fancy looking house and gets caught, we think, right before it cuts to the title. And then we meet our heroine at her
Yep.
nebulous marketing PR job that she can leave for several weeks to go run off with the prince.
So I never realized that was like a thing with Lifetime movies until I started doing
Yeah.
this podcast and watching more and more of them. Because Leslie, my wife, and I have watched like a handful, but like never really gone deep into the more like stabby Lifetime movies. We do
Mm.
like really enjoy their Hallmarkish, Christmas ones, but haven't really gotten too deep into these. And I've noticed that it is like the first 30 seconds or so are kind of like the previous lover or whatever being murdered, and then we jump to kind of pick up with whoever our main character is going to be. So yeah, like my first comment like in my notes is like we're jumping right in like um and so we see this woman get stabbed to death, what we assume, and then we jump into kind of present day or wherever we are at this PR firm with Alyssa, and it's kind of set up that she's potentially looking for a man, or there's like this what's the word I'm looking for, gala that she's going to go with her friend. um and we also get the fact that this prince is now in town, and I think the one thing that threw me off is they make a big deal about him being a prince, and it's this big deal he's in town, but there's like 4 paparazzi. And I think now that we know,
Which
yeah.
the funniest thing about that to me is like, there are a ton of European countries or countries in general around the world, right? Where like the president of Poland used to like open his office every day and like have people come hang out in it. Like
Yeah.
it's not every royalty or every head of state or whatever is like the English royal family.
Yeah.
So in my head, when he was first introduced, I was like, oh, cool. He's just like insert fake European country prince here.
Yeah.
But then later we find out he's the Prince of England, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Exactly.
they,
Like
and
a
so I
pretty
was
big
like,
deal.
whoa.
And he does
Okay.
make a
All right.
comment
This is
too,
different.
like early, because he's got like this bodyguard slash handler
Mhm.
slash just kind of guy who's with him all the time. And he makes a comment that, like, oh, you've got to play it up for the cameras, or like, he kind of
Mhm.
leans into the fact that he's being followed by the paparazzi. But, and I get, budget limitations and stuff, but like, it's a little
Right.
like, I know we,
Okay.
my wife and I watch a lot of the Housewives and the Kardashians, and I'm like, I've
Mhm.
seen paparazzi. And I think the other thing that threw me off too is he comes into this hotel and, like, very nice hotel room, but again,
But not like Prince of England hotel room, right? Like
exactly,
that's
it's
always that's the tricky thing about doing the royalty movies on these
yeah,
budgets, right? Is you can see the seams on it, right? Like, and I
exactly,
think they would have done themselves a bigger favor if it had been tiny European country no one gives a
yeah,
care about versus he is the literal second in line to the throne of England. I'm like,
exactly,
okay, all
like.
right, I don't know about this, Jack, if that is your real name.
A very nice hotel room, but it looked like something like Leslie and I would go to if we splurged for the weekend.
Right.
Like I don't know if Jack like went down and got like the free breakfast buffet the next morning, but it had similar vibes. We're also introduced to Rachel, who is Alyssa's kind of best friend slash works with her at the PR, and they go to this charity event, and Jack kind of makes this comment to his bodyguard that, I don't like going to these things, but apparently he has like some vested interest in this event. So he randomly decides to go, and Rachel kind of spots him as soon as he walks in. Is like, oh, he never turns up to these things. I'm gonna hook you up with him. And like immediately goes over, and Rachel is not a good friend. Like Rachel has ulterior motives and like is very like, no, you gotta date this guy. You gotta call him, you gotta do it. Like, maybe let things slow down a little bit, Rachel.
Yeah, like the first thing Rachel says when Jack and Melissa have a conversation is you two would make hot babies. And I'm like, Rachel,
Right?
be a better friend.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, hey, I've got some nude photos of her on my phone. You want to see these? Also, did you pick up that
it's
Rachel was dressed exactly like Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Like the thing
no.
and everything, you got to go back and look because it is definitely like an homage, like for sure.
Okay.
I
Well,
have zero doubt.
I hope Ruth was a better friend. I do think here's the thing is like there is a difference between a good Lifetime movie friend and a
Yeah,
good real life friend. A good
sure.
Lifetime movie friend will make the movie happen and make it interesting. Like Lifetime movie friend does not answer the phone when you're about to get stabbed.
No,
Lifetime movie friend gets you involved with the stalker. Lifetime movie friend does all of the worst things that makes the movie happen, but I do not wish to have her as a friend in real life.
no, absolutely not. Because I think the thing that's interesting, and I mean, probably better than anyone, is there's always some tension in the beginning between like our two main characters, right? And Prince Jack and Alyssa have that a bit. But what I found interesting was there's some real like obvious red flags right off the bat. Like Jack is not by any means like a likable guy right from the get-go, right? Like he comes off as a little pompous in a way that like he says like, oh, you have to play it up for the cameras, and like he's very sort of cognizant. So it was interesting to me that they didn't go in a direction where it's like, oh, he seems so charming, what could possibly be wrong? Like he's not super like likable right off the bat, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess I wish if I were queen of Lifetime, I would probably have rather instead of her being like, so we eventually learn kind of the reason that she doesn't immediately want to kind of jump in with Jack and have a relationship is that she just got out of a very bad relationship and is trying to like she wants to take the next relationship slow.
Yep.
I sort of wish they had flipped that and had her be like, I just got out of a bad relationship. We were together forever. I got to go like do something crazy. Like I kind of wanted her to be more like not self-destructive, but like she's ignoring the red flags
Yeah.
because she has kind of an ulterior motive or agenda that's
Yep.
sort of making her a little bit out of not out of control, but make unwise decisions like some of us do
Yeah.
when we get out of a relationship. Um, I do think he had maybe a little more game than you give him credit
Oh,
for.
sure. Yeah.
Like and of course, being a prince, being royalty, especially apparently of England, like that carries a certain amount of like, oh, he's so different, he's so posh.
Yeah.
Anything weird is just me not understanding,
Yeah.
like I think there is probably, from Alyssa's point of view, I think I can see a little bit more of that.
Sure.
But yeah, I think as we'll talk about, the more it goes, like the more intense, especially before they go to England. Spoiler alert: they eventually go to England
Yeah.
together. The sharp increase in how like fast their relationship builds.
Yeah.
That is where all of the red flags are for me. And I'm like, oh no, Rachel, I need you to be a better friend and intervene here.
Yeah,
Like,
that's actually a really good point, right? Because like had they kind of set it up as like, oh, she's been bouncing around from different relationships or just kind of keeps meeting these terrible guys, like it would be a little more understandable of like because it does like ramp up quickly. Like you mentioned, they go to England and like that's like day 3 or something. Like it goes very quickly. So there is kind of this it's a little she doesn't want to rush in, but then she is flying to England like almost immediately to go to his house. And like, so it is like I agree. If they had kind of set it up where she is kind of in this, not destructive, but whatever sort of pattern, it would have been a little easier to understand. On the flip side, we do get this scene with him in the hotel room where he takes off his shirt and he's got like all these cuts and like he's obviously been through some things. We get a call from his brother who asks about him like taking his pills. So pretty early we know that like our prince he's going through some things and we don't know specifically like what the pills are for, but like
oh no, there is
oh,
a
do they
rack
say?
focus on the pill bottle. Yeah, and it just says in very big capital letters, antipsychotic.
Oh.
So
I missed that.
yeah. It's not a close up, but they rack focus like when it's kind of wider on the whole hotel bathroom counter, and I was like, interesting. Now I
Antipsychotic.
know.
That can't be good. Like everybody, I guess the old joke is like everybody snoops through like the medicine cabinet, but like if your pills say just antipsychotic, like come on. Like
Right, especially when you're like the future, you're an heir to like.
yeah,
What if the hotel maid comes in and then like tells the tabloids, "Oh, Prince
exactly.
Jack is taking antipsychotics."
Like do better, pharmacist. Uh, but she is kind of immediately drawn to him, right? Like they definitely have this
Mm-hmm.
flirty way about them and they start seeing each other almost immediately. He taps her phone like
Mm-hmm.
almost
Very cool of
immediately.
him.
Yeah. And so before the tapping, right? Like he ends up going like outside of her house, like he finds out where she lives. Um, which again, she kind of brushes off a little bit. And I think her friend even says, like, oh, he's a prince. Obviously, he's gonna find out. And it's like, no, that is not a good
No.
friend. Like
Yeah. So they go on a date. Like she kind of bunks off from work and goes on a date with him, and they like have champagne at this fancy hotel,
yeah,
and she kind of blithely mentions that like she just got out of a relationship and she's trying to take things slow, and then he takes her on a carriage ride.
yeah,
He's like, "Well, I'm going to leave soon. Maybe you can come with me." And then he shows up, or no, that he taps her phone,
yeah.
and then he hears her talking to her ex,
Her
right?
ex calls and kind of says like, "Oh, I don't want to get back together, but I just want to talk and kind of catch up and stuff." And yeah, like that's where he after he had tapped, and that's where we really outside of the kind of first scene, which we assume is him, he ends up showing up at her apartment as the ex-boyfriend is showing up too, and just beats the hell out of him and ends up killing him, right? Like
Yeah,
in an alley.
brutally murders him.
Yeah, like
And says like the last thing the poor guy hears is like before he dies is she's mine. I'm like,
yeah,
wow, that's a
like
lot, dude. You just met her. Like even for a psychotic prince,
yeah.
I feel like that's a lot.
It
Like
took
you
longer for
literally just met her 24 hours ago.
like Mark Wahlberg in Fear, like it still took like a few dates before like he
Mm-hmm.
went complete batshit. Like,
Right.
but I mean, she's very charming. So, hey, I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to whatever shame him, whatever that would be. Um, but, but yeah, so then what they kind of date a little bit, and that's when the trip to England comes up, right? Like he says, I have to go back home to do whatever. Why don't you come with me? And she agrees. And again, I totally get your point. You're kind of swept up in the prince of it all, and I would probably go too if I was her. Like if I was single.
Well, I guess,
The,
sorry.
no. It's like I'm single. Someone's offering a castle to me. Like, sure.
Okay, so I have two things related to this. One, I actually did this last year. There was a guy who my friend had met once at a party, and his family they're barons, or his dad's a baron in France, and they have a castle called Montlevec. And he was like, "Well, when you guys come to France, you should stay." And so we like literally went. We got a car to take us to the castle in the middle of nowhere that was like literally crumbling and falling. And I was like, this is how we die. We're going to die here. I'm the dumb girl in the Lifetime movie.
You're Rachel. You're Rachel.
Right, I'm Rachel. A funny story. So he serves us this amazing dinner in a wine cellar. And I said, "Oh, Pierre, is this the part where you kill us and you bury us in the cellar?" And he goes, "Oh, no, I wouldn't kill you here." I was like, "Oh, no. Oh, no, Pierre, is not what you say. Not what you say at all."
It's terrifying, but that's also like the perfect response.
Right? Perfect response. Excellent. I couldn't have written it better. And then the other thing I once had a professor who said, characters don't know what story they're in, right? So like when you yell at the character in the movie who like goes down the creepy stairs, they don't know they're in a horror movie. They hear a weird noise and they go investigate. Like she is thinking, oh, if I go and I hate it, then I just get a flight back and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I spent a couple cool days in the castle. Like it's easy to be like, this dumb bitch doesn't know what she's doing, going to England with some rando, and like you never think a prince is gonna murder you and bury you in his like old stables.
That's what I was just thinking too, right? Like he's a prince, he's in the public eye, everyone knows him, so the chances that he's going to be able to murder you without somebody finding out are very slim. Although, I mean, I guess it's happened. Like, and we kind of discover that. But like, yeah, I 100% like can get the just like you get swept up in it and you're going to go do your thing. So, and the chance to go to a castle in England with the, potential heir to the throne, like that's got to be pretty appealing. So don't 100% falter by any means. What I do fault is that small table they sit at. On there, like, because what he sets up like a picnic or something at this castle, and it's a very beautiful setting, but it was the smallest table I've ever seen. Like, fresh out of like, I don't know if you had this friend growing up, but like those like decorative like tables that people would put in their backyards that like no one actually used, but it was kind of just like in the corner. Like it was one of those. And again, I'm like, you're a prince. Come on, like we need a bigger table, like something more,
Yes, absolutely. I feel like that was kind of my sense of the whole. Again, thinking about budget, right? Like the whole castle. I was like, I don't know about all this. And then when the older brother, eventually the older brother and his wife and the two children show up, and the brother is like, Kensington was busy and crowded, and I was like, you should have stayed there. This place is not for you.
Right?
This is like Costco Castle over here. Like you should have stayed in Kensington. But again, just make him a prince of a random country. Don't make him the Prince of England.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And it is interesting, like the dynamic between like him and his brother, him and this bodyguard. Like the bodyguard I found to be like the most interesting through all of this, right? Because you never quite know which side he's on. And you get the impression he's kind of aware that these things have happened because he's very sort of cautious, like, oh, you're going to start dating another woman? Like, so you get the idea that he's aware of the princess past. But he also kind of shows these signs of like being super concerned and doesn't want these things to happen again. And like, I would say that is more kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like, will they, won't they of this, right? Like, is the bodyguard gonna like flip and try and help her, or is he just gonna kind of like do his usual thing? I don't know. What was your take on the bodyguard?
Yeah, I really liked him. I think the actor was really great.
Yeah.
And I actually do think, like, at its heart, this is such a, like, as silly as I thought the title was,
Yeah.
like, it it actually is kind of a compelling premise, right?
Hmm.
Like, especially now knowing what we know about, like, the actual British royal family and the things that they've
Yeah.
hidden and the crimes that they have, like, gone out of their way to make sure no one knows about.
Yeah.
And, like, the prince actually points out at one point, he's like, I'm a descendant of Henry VIII and Mad King George. We are like inbred to the kingdom
Yeah.
come. Like, obviously, one of us is going to be murderous and crazy and weird. Like, I think it acknowledges a lot of things that actually are very scary about
Yeah.
being in a situation with super powerful people. And I think one of the things that's scary about that is the people who do offer like blind, unflinching loyalty over their own like moral and internal objections and
Yeah.
like, well, this is my life, this is what I've dedicated myself to, I'm for queen and country or whatever the case may be. And I think that was what made the bodyguard so interesting to me, was you could tell he knows this is totally messed up,
Yeah.
but even knowing how messed up it is, he continues to like serve this quote unquote higher purpose.
Yeah.
And I did really find that compelling and interesting and kind of a cool element to um, what is otherwise kind of a more typical Lifetime thriller.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Because it, in kind of your standard movie, like he's just kind of the hitman, right? Like he's there to clean up the
Mm-hmm.
mess. And like we do get a lot of kind of his emotional back and forth of like, I know this is wrong, but also like, you got to imagine he's been with, I know I just keep calling him the prince, but with Jack,
Jack.
probably from when he was very young. So like, probably has seen this progressively get worse and worse over time. So he's, got kind of this connection with him. So it is interesting to watch that unfold. And to your point, too, like I did kind of like the fact that he's not this super charming guy right off the bat, right? Because it does break the formula a bit. So 100% right. Like it does kind of twist things a bit. I mean, we kind of get the standard formula, but there is like, oh, like he's not like, you don't fall in love with him immediately, but you do kind of get it, right? So it is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And then the brother, the dynamic with him and Jack is also interesting because it seems like his whole family is also well aware of Jack's past. And I don't know if they're aware of like the murder, but they know like he's definitely got issues. And the brother is really the one who's like, you should be taking your pills. You got to kind of get this under control. And like, there's a lot of tension there. And then we kind of find out that apparently she has been offline this entire time. Alyssa has been like completely separated from the world, which I know castles are very old, but like there's got to be like a cell phone signal there, right? Because like she does finally get on Wi-Fi, and that's when like all the texts and stuff come flooding in. But like I find it hard to believe there wasn't like a Verizon store somewhere near there with like a connection.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird to me. I guess I guess maybe it's the royal safety. Like I
Yeah,
guess I could come up
exactly.
with things that would make it make sense. And I guess it is just like one of those tropes and conventions. But sometimes I do wonder what these movies would be like if everyone had reliable cell service. Like,
Yeah.
how could you make it more interesting if everyone has a phone at all times?
Yeah.
Um, and I think they do something kind of interesting with that ultimately,
Yeah.
um, in the end. But yeah, for her to be totally offline the entire time, like she's in marketing and PR.
Yeah.
Like, come on, she's got to have a Wi-Fi connection
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah. So she gets on and immediately gets like a report that her ex-boyfriend had been murdered. And that's kind of like, that starts to like tip things off, right? She ends up finding an earring with like blood on it in the room that she's staying in, and Prince Jack kind of brushes it off like, oh, that looks like rust, it's cheap, blah blah blah. So she's starting to see signs, and then she goes on a walk around the castle, gets to the horse stables which were abandoned, but finds a dead body. And then the bodyguard shows up, and I thought this was interesting too, like if you just found a dead body and then someone walks in the room, no matter who it is, I'm going to be freaked out. But like she immediately composes herself and does not let on that like she has found anything. And like just completely plays it stone face. So I don't know. I know I would be like sobbing uncontrollably and like, looking for the door, but she, keeps it together, which I thought was, good for her. I don't think I could do it though.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I'm an idiot, so I probably would have been like, someone has put this body here. Like
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have even been like Prince Jack killed this girl. I'd have been like, wow, horrible, Jack, hold me.
Yeah.
I would have
100%.
been a total idiot about it.
Like told someone, but like she's immediately just like,
Right.
nope, don't say a thing. But then like she's starting to piece things together. The guard is being super creepy and like kind of escorts her out of there. Um, it's she's starting to see the signs, and that's when she starts trying to kind of get away, right? And that's really where we come to the climax or the end of this thing where we get this the conflict between the bodyguard and Jack, and eventually Alyssa's trying to leave, right? And she bumps into him, and then he like turns and just says like, no, you need to go, and then like screams at her like, you got to get out of here. um there's a conflict between the bodyguard and Jack ends up killing the bodyguard, or so we think. And then things kind of kick off from there. I think the brother gets killed, right? Doesn't he kill his brother
Yeah,
also?
yeah. So they're all having dinner, Jack and Alyssa and the brother and his wife. And um, Alyssa tries to give the brother's wife a note that says, like, call the
Right.
police, help me. And the bodyguard picks it up eventually and confronts her and is like, this was ill advised. Do not do this. And he kind of like puts it back in his pocket, like kind of, this is our own little secret thing.
Yeah.
Then she goes back to the table and is sort of freaking out in the middle of this dinner and tries to excuse herself. But then Jack, like the bodyguard, drops the note and Jack sees it. And then Jack and Alyssa sort of have this fight.
Yeah.
And is that when the recording happens, or is
I
it?
think so. Oh, yes. Yeah. So that's,
Yeah.
she's trying to get away. She's on the Wi-Fi finally, and like she doesn't know what she's going to do. So she gets the brother's kid's tablet, I think, which is
Mm-hmm.
like he has like a TikTok, Instagram, or some sort of account. So she turns that on and goes live, and then confronts Prince Jack and pretty much gets him to admit everything. Meanwhile, as the royal family, whoever's account this is has millions of followers. So like everyone's seeing this, and it's like, all unfolding. And then we get kind of the final conclusion, which I was a little bummed with because Alyssa doesn't really get her kind of,
Like, yeah.
yeah, exactly, her gotcha, or like, she stands up for
Mm-hmm.
herself. The bodyguard pops up again, and he's like near death, but shoots Prince Jack, and like that's how we kind of wrap things up. And I don't know, what did you think of that?
And
Because
now England does not have a royal
yeah,
family.
everything's like thrown
Both
into a
princes are
tizzy.
dead.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was a little bummed that she didn't get her revenge. But I don't know. What did you think of the conclusion?
I think practically, like it's
Oh,
as
100%.
as hard and ask as it is to believe that both princes are dead of England. I feel like if she had shot the prince, no matter what would have happened beforehand,
Yeah.
it would have been like she can't just leave and go back home and start like a PR firm with her friend,
Yeah.
right? Like I think logically it makes the most sense to have the bodyguard do it.
Yeah.
But I did want her to kill him.
Yeah.
I wanted her to kill him so bad.
Yeah. Have some sort of, her moment. But yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
I
get it
wanted
too.
her to
Like,
have a girl boss moment. Like
exactly.
and even in the end, it's kind of a bummer. Like, so it ends with kind of like a voiceover conversation with her and Rachel is her best
Rachel.
friend.
Yep.
Yeah, Alyssa and Rachel are talking about opening up their own firm. And even in that, Alyssa is like so muted. She's
Yeah.
like, oh no, we can't go international because I think I've had enough of that for now. And I'm like, girl, no, take the world by storm.
Yeah.
You escaped a stalker prince. You can do anything.
Yeah, you're on video, like you're a part of this thing, like everyone's gonna know you. Like, start to milk this for all it's worth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the ending, I also thought like I had to rewind it a couple times because it cuts very quick, and like we kind of get that
Mm.
voiceover, and then it's just like gone, and I'm like, did I miss something? Like, did something record wrong? But it does just kind of like cut right off because you do expect Prince Jack to like pop up again or something, and like we set this up, but it's very like, nope, we're done.
Yeah, I thought what they were doing because it like kind of pans to the castle at night and
And they
like the
show the
lights on. So I
lights
was like,
on, yeah,
okay. I was like, are they implying that he's alive and recovering and like
yeah,
kind of waiting for his moment to strike? Which, like, if there is a Stalked by the Prince too, I am absolutely in for it. I want her to go into witness protection. I want like grizzled bodyguard to like
yeah.
still be like surviving with his injuries and like training her to defeat the prince. Like, I'm in for it. Please call me if you need someone to
Yeah.
write that. Um, but like, I do wish there had been like a little more of a button at the end to sort of like
Yeah.
seal our fates
Yeah.
in the story.
I would have liked a little
But
more
yeah.
stalking too, right? Like he taps her phone, but outside of that, she's pretty much on board with him, like from the moment she
Hmm.
meets him. And there's not a lot of stalking. Like he shows up outside of her house, but then like she's fine with it. So, and I get it. It was like we joked about on the last episode, you're baking me crazy. There wasn't a ton of bacon in there, but like,
What? No way.
well, there is like one of the chefs has a food truck and it's all bacon themed, but like actual bacon screen time, maybe a few seconds tops. And I could be forgetting something, but like it's very minimal. And the bacon we do see is like cold. It's been sitting in the truck all day. Like yeah.
Oh.
Uh, it's a real letdown. But yeah, not a ton of like actual stalking, which I thought
Mm.
was a bold choice.
Yeah. I also had that thought. I do wish there had been more. Like, I wanted to see the prince really use kind of like
Yeah.
all of his powers, like triangulate her phone, like calling in like
Yes. Yeah.
British MI6 or whatever. Like, I would have liked to see a little more of that kind of like fun. Not
Exactly.
fun
Yep.
for her, obviously, but fun for a movie.
Yeah.
um,
Because to your
that kind
point,
of
like
toys.
the royal family 100% can sweep this stuff under the rug. So like I would have liked to have seen a little more like, oh, everybody knows about this, and it's implied a bit but like not to a certain extent, but like everybody knows about this
Hmm.
but nobody talks about it, right? And like so, we do get scenes of him like we said outside the house. Like there's a scene where he's just like watching her sleep, which, hey,
Mm.
we've all got our things. But as far as like stalking, it's minimal, which sounds insane, and I sound
Hmm.
super creepy saying that. Like, I would have done much, much more stalking. Um, but you know, overall, I agree. Like, it's an interesting movie where it doesn't follow the exact Lifetime pattern, but it still kind of ticks all the boxes. So if there's nothing else, we can kind of wrap up the movie discussion unless there's
Hmm.
anything else you wanted to hit on.
No. I think it's a really good entry into the bad boyfriend Lifetime canon, and I think the fact that he's a prince really heightens the drama in ways that I did not expect.
Yeah.
And I wish there had been more, but I am thrilled with what I got.
Yeah. So the tough question here, you're happily ever after. Who from this do you end up, spending the rest of your life in the castle with from this
Okay,
illustrious
so
cast?
it is. It's again a very difficult choice because
Yeah.
everyone in this movie sucks. But it's gonna be in one of the scenes. She goes on a walk and she gets to the town, and she goes into a pub,
The pub
and there's like a
owner.
little nice barkeeper lady.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, the barkeeper lady is sort of like that old crone you see sometimes, like the harbinger in
Yep.
horror movies, where he's like, "Don't go to that old house."
Oh,
The
it's
pub lady is like, I've heard weird stories, but it's not like,
you're gonna
I'll
get
call you the
murdered. Yeah.
police.
Yeah.
Get out of here. So she's the best of everyone in the movie, I think,
Yeah.
but still not great.
Yeah, I was actually because I was looking at the cast and completely forgot about her while we were talking. But yeah, the pub owner is like the one who's like, I don't know about that. You might want to watch yourself. And like she kind of ignores it. But like, she's starting to see the signs by that point. But she's like, all right, I'm gonna go back. So yeah, I would probably go with her as well. It's on IMDb, she's just listed as pub owner. But the other options you have, like the bodyguard, maybe, although he's obviously got a past where he's ignored some things. Rachel, but no. Like, I feel like if you were dating Rachel, she would spend her entire time talking about how she's trying to set up everybody else around you. And like, it's too much. And then, yeah, the brother or the brother's wife, like, again, they probably know things, So really the pub owner is the only one whose hands are clean in this entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right. So that is Stalked by a Prince. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Would you recommend?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. This
Yeah.
is it's an iconic entry into the Lifetime canon. Highly recommend. Wear your tiara. You'll have a blast.
I do love that, like, there, and I would recommend it as well for the exact same reasons. Like, it's crazy enough without being so like over the top of you're like, what the hell is happening here, right? Like,
Hmm.
100% agree. There's so many red flags, and it's the Wheel of Fortune. The answer. Why is nobody else getting it? But like, in the moment, especially after we got done talking, man, I 100% agree that like I would probably be on board with this too. Like, a prince, I'm in my early 20s. A prince wants to take me away. Like, absolutely, let's do this. Um, so it kind of walks that line very well. So yeah, no, I ended up enjoying it too. My long ramble is just to get to that. So that's Stalked by a Prince. We do have a couple questions from Instagram. We're on there at Small and Failing on Instagram and Twitter. I'll post up usually like the day before, and you can send in your questions. The first one is, and I think this one's interesting, is why do you put yourself watching, or why do you put yourself through watching some of these movies? And I'm kind of curious your take, because in my eyes, I enjoy these movies, right? But there is kind of a, I don't want to use the right word, like Lifetime and Hallmark as well. There is kind of this aura around that. I'm like, oh, it's just schlock. But like, you yourself as like a writer that has done these, like, I'm sure you hear the criticism. Like, what, I guess, what's your take, or like, how do you kind of, how to, talk through that, or whatever, however you
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah. So this is something I talk about a lot, where I do feel that these are primarily genres for women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Women in Peril Lifetime movies, the romantic Hallmark movies. Networks assume that these are, you know, cisgender, straight, white, generally white women. Lifetime now is diversifying, but generally speaking. And I do feel that like that as a demographic, just women in general, things that they like are sort of looked down upon,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore by people who are hired to write them, they are not treated with respect. Like
Mm-hmm.
the genre isn't treated with respect, the viewers are not treated with respect. They're just like, oh, this is a quick script I can write, churn out, no one cares. It's just a bunch of women watching at home. It's not prestige drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally have a lot of respect for the genres that are on both networks, and a lot of respect for the viewers, because I am one. Like I love romance movies. I want them to be good, and I never turn on the television hoping I'm going to watch something bad. Like
Right.
I am always rooting for these movies to be good because they occupy such an important space in the market. So and viewers, kind of viewing diets, like people tune into these movies all the time for millions and millions of reasons, and I want them to be good. So the reason I watch them is because I want to be entertained, I want to be delighted, I want to be shocked, I want to be, swept off my feet, whatever it is. But I watch them because I want them to be good, and more often than not, especially now with the way that Hallmark in particular is
100%.
trending,
Yep.
I am more often than not, I'm entertained and delighted. So, um, yeah, that's the way that I feel, I think.
That's awesome. I love that.
Again,
Like,
very wordy answer, but that's
no,
my
but I think it's perfect, right? Because there is, I don't know, like, I come from like a horror movie background, and I did a horror movie podcast for like 10 years. And there is a very sort of gatekeeper, like, this is good, this is not good. And like, I also listen to a lot of metal music, and like the same thing, like, oh, I listen to this. Oh, you listen to Disturb. Well, that's shit, right? Like, and it's, and feel like, especially in the last 5 years, like, or more at this point, like, if a movie's making you happy, and or music or whatever is making you happy, and you're enjoying it, like, why shit on it for somebody else, right? Like, this is a genre, maybe it's not for you, but like there is a lot of heart and soul put into these, and I totally get there's ones that are just churned out and kind of done for the sake of being done. But like at the end of the day, even if it is quote unquote bad and you have a good time watching it with someone, even if you're kind of goofing, like why is that a bad thing? Right. Like I think it's, and especially like you say, and I honestly, I credit you a lot with a lot of like the Hallmark stuff because like Every Time a Bell Rings was one of the first movies I saw where there was like queer representation and things like that. And it's like they've come so far, and there's still a lot of the same tropes and stuff, but like why talk down to that for someone else, right? Like I think it was a few years back where I kind of made a conscious decision to like not talk shitty about like music that people like because it's like I listen to awful screaming stuff and it sounds like trash cans to a lot of people. So like who am I to say like, oh, you shouldn't like this because of whatever, So I don't know. Again, long-winded and your response was much more eloquent, but like at the end of the day, if it's making you happy, like why is it a bad thing, right? And I do think there is, and it's why I didn't want this podcast to just be like me and my dude bro friends just goofing on these movies, like because there is a lot of heart and soul in these, and I do really enjoy watching it at the heart of it, and obviously I joke around a lot, but like yeah, I think your response is absolutely perfect. And the person who sent this in, I'm sure was joking around, but like you
Yeah,
got
of course. Yeah.
you got a bigger response than you probably wanted. But yeah, at the end of the day, like if it's making you happy, like just let it be. Like it's not bothering anyone anyway. And you know what? Especially with everything we've been through and like the last things like every once in a while, like just some comfort food movie, like I think it's like the best thing you can kind of do right now. So oh yeah, perfect. um One other question we got, a lot less deep, but how much would you ignore to live in that castle?
I mean, okay, so going back to my France story,
Yeah.
um, I was sleeping in a bed, but the bed didn't have pillows on it. They gave me a bag of rice in a pillowcase. Um, there was one bathroom for the entire castle.
Wait, go back to the
Um,
pillowcase rice thing.
yeah. So we didn't have pillows. We literally it was a bag of rice put in a pillowcase, and that was the pillow.
Is that a thing or is that
The
just like out of
half of the
necessity?
castle wasn't there.
Oh,
I'll send you pictures. Like
oh my god, yeah.
there was a hole. There were holes in the ceiling. Like it was amazing. I got to sleep in a castle. It was the
Yeah.
coolest thing I've ever done. But I've done a lot to sleep in a castle. I'll say that.
That's amazing because you do have this image of like, oh, when you were first telling the story, you said a baroness who slept in the castle. I'm picturing like this movie, if not more like grandiose, but no, you're sleeping with rice. And like, how was the bed? Was the bed comfortable at least?
Um, no,
All
it was
right.
not.
I assumed like at that point. All right. So that's the questions we got this week. Instagram and Twitter, Small and Failing. I mentioned smalltownfailingpodcast at gmail.com if you want to send in questions. Cameo, thanks to everyone that sent them in. You can find Small Town Failing Podcast on Cameo. I still don't know like how that's getting by. What did I miss? iTunes and Spotify reviews. Thanks so much. That's a huge help. And I think, YouTube. Small Town Failing Podcast on YouTube. I started posting up. I think the last 4 or 5 episodes will be up there. So will this one, as long as I didn't screw up anything. Alys, where can everybody find you, and what have you kind of got working on right now?
Yeah, you can find me at writer Alys, WriterAlys on Instagram and Twitter. And right now, I'm in process on a lot of things. I can't
Awesome.
break any news for you, but soon I'll hopefully have some cool stuff to share.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, thank you as always for coming on. I love when you come on when we talk about your movies, but I do, especially the Lifetime ones, I think is so fun. And it is kind of a
Mhm.
break from the romance week after week. So this is always a blast. So thank you very much again. No clue what we're doing next time, but we'll figure it out. And yeah, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely.
All right, bye.